Now, for a while, there's been these rather interesting rumors floating around out there that basically say the upcoming Disney Plus series, The Acolyte, has been anything from canceled to just not a real thing in the first place. That what they were filming or had filmed was something more along the lines of a sizzle reel in order to pitch the show to try and get it greenlit. And almost as if to shoot these rumors down and confirm they are all in on this project, Disney, who ironically enough has been talking a lot lately about how much money they spend on these shows, that they have to cut back to maybe one day make Disney Plus profitable. Anyway, Disney recently came out and said that for pre-production alone on The Acolyte, they spent a little over $49 million. Which you don't need me to tell you is a whole lot of money, so much so that it's more than they tend to even spend on pre-production for films. For example, that's over $5 million more than got spent on Rogue One during pre-production. In other words, that would have been a ton of money to spend on a sizzle reel that may have never moved beyond that point in production. Not to mention there's also been plenty of other talk and news coming out about the show, from casting announcements to locations they filmed at, and they very much say that this is really happening, or has happened since reportedly it wrapped filming a few months back now and shortly before the writer and actor strikes kicked in. And so barring something really strange happening, The Acolyte will indeed be coming out sometime next year on Disney+. And considering those aforementioned strikes could be going on for some time yet, that there's no end to them in sight, there's very little chance Disney is going to scrap something that's already been filmed and is in post-production, because it won't be too long until new content starts to run dry for them. However, all that said, there's no real guarantee that The Acolyte is going to be some kind of massive hit, or even a hit at all. In fact, when it comes to luring in the casual fan or regular viewer, well, you don't really have anything all too recognizable to fall back on or base your marketing off of, other than, of course, Jedi and Sith or lightsaber stuff, basically. And in due time, the Ahsoka series should begin to tell us how appealing that is to the casual fan, if the promise of lightsaber stuff is appealing enough when they might not know much else. Though at least Ahsoka has the luxury of being set in the Mandoverse time period, and she's even shown up a time or two in it already and will be recognizable to plenty of those who have watched those other shows, and so she may lure them in that way. The Acolyte, on the other hand, will again have Jedi and lightsabers and all that, but it'll be all brand new characters set in a time period that, again for the more casual audience, will have absolutely nothing to do with anything else they've seen before. And even for a lot of fans, the High Republic era is not something they know or care about, and at most there may be a Yoda appearance or something along those lines in the trailer to get people intrigued as to what this is or what it's all about. Plus, when it comes to the more hardcore fans, plenty are already leery of this upcoming series for any number of reasons, including all the talk about how it will be a reflection of the modern world, which has become, shall we say, a sort of red flag for people who just want entertainment for the sake of entertainment these days. For those who get a healthy dose of the modern world around them from the modern world around them. Plenty of fans, I'd wager, or just casual viewers, want Star Wars to be an escape from our world, to be more of a reflection of itself at this point in time. After nearly 50 years of existence, Star Wars should look inward for some inspiration instead of having to sort of change with the times necessarily. For example, if they really wanted to do a show set before the prequel trilogy, which The Acolyte is set to be, it's supposed to be set around 100 years before the prequel trilogy and is in the waning days of the High Republic era. But if that's what they wanted to do, to in a way set those films up or lead into the prequel trilogy to connect with them to some degree, to again maybe draw in some fans and to just do something interesting, to maybe sort of explain the state of the galaxy in those films or how we get to the point where trade routes are in dispute, well, there just so happens to already be a perfect story for that from Legends, that being the Darth Plagueis novel, which is, in my opinion, one of the best books from the old expanded universe, and one that could not only easily be slid into the current canon, but could even be expanded upon to tell an even broader or larger story across multiple seasons perhaps. It could be an even bigger prequel story than the book already is. And I feel pretty confident in saying that I'm far from the only one who loved that book and would be thrilled to see an on-screen adaptation of it, assuming the goal, of course, was to do justice to the book, to not use it as a shell or to use the name alone to lure in fans, but end up changing pretty much everything about it once you start watching it. And speaking of the name Plagueis, well, it might not be one that every single casual fan or average viewer immediately recalls from the prequels, but it's easy to remind them. You need only show a clip of that classic scene from Revenge of the Sith in the trailer to do so. And so you could get them intrigued. It could be maybe a little refreshing or different to have a show that was perhaps going to show us or feature the Sith or things from their perspective, especially as they kind of undermined the Jedi in this time period. Instead, we'll be getting a show that, yeah, seems like it'll be dealing with the Sith to some degree. It's supposed to deal with emerging dark side powers. But how much can they really do and pull off 100 years before the prequels? Ki-Adi-Mundi seemed pretty confident in this scene, as did Mace Windu.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
So it's not like 100 years before all of that, the Jedi, were running into and fighting Darksiders or finding clues of the existence or possible reemergence of the Sith. And look, I'm not saying there's no chance whatsoever the Acolyte could be good, but it feels like another choice already existed and could have done a much better job of accomplishing everything this show is setting out to do for the franchise. And that it would have been appreciated even more by the fans, especially the fans of the EU who were asked to sacrifice what they had been devoted to for decades in favor of Lucasfilm creating something new, creating the new canon as it's often referred to. Though maybe the problem is the same problem we've seen a lot of in modern entertainment these days, that those making it don't care so much about the source material or what it can do for the franchise, what they're creating can do for the franchise itself, as much as what the franchise can be used for to further their own goals. I mean, I keep up with all things Star Wars related, including, of course, the Acolyte. And I swear I've heard far more from the people involved about how this will further their own cause, rather than what it'll do for Star Wars or why fans will love it. And yeah, I know this is when some will want to take to the comments and tell me Star Wars has always been political, so this is nothing new, and I did a video on that a few days ago talking about how silly that statement is. Or they'll go with the classic, no one hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. But the only ones who actually say that are people outside the fandom who really don't care about the fandom or get the fans of it, or those within it who automatically love all things Star Wars without question, who think critical thinking in regards to the franchise is some sort of betrayal of the franchise. But anyway, as I said, I'm not giving up on The Acolyte. I'll give it a fair chance when it comes out, as I do with all things. But the more I hear, the more I can't help but wonder, who was this made for or why? We even recently heard that Keanu Reeves filmed a scene for the show, and instead of being super excited because, like everyone else on the planet, I think he's a great actor, I couldn't help but feel like his appearance is going to be wasted in this show. Unless that is, and this is a big unless, we see him as Revan in some sort of maybe a holocron or something along those lines. And in that case, I fear one of the coolest things we will ever get in Star Wars will be wasted on this show. Again, a show that doesn't seem all too interested in being a part of Star Wars or honoring the fans, but instead doing what it wants to honor their own agendas. And Disney seems, I guess, more than happy to give them plenty of money to do it, all the while scratching their heads and wondering why their streaming service, featuring something as beloved as Star Wars, something they paid $4 billion for, isn't bringing in the money and isn't profitable. Well, maybe if you're focused on just making great Star Wars, that would change. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me how you're feeling about the Acolyte from everything you've heard. Are you excited for this, or does it feel like a wasted opportunity to bring a character like Plagueis to live action and to bring a story, the Plagueis novel, to a wider audience? Whatever you think, leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.